Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia and welcome back to the Overwatch Transfer Roundup. So we have some transfers to get through, let's get right to it. And we start off with the DPS player from Finland, well-known DPS player from Clockwork Vendetta. This is Ricky. He has now left Clockwork Vendetta and he is no longer assigned. This is a shame because, you know, Ricky gave us some really interesting plays last year with Clockwork Vendetta. But again, Clockwork Vendetta are shifting slightly in what they've been doing. They have let a lot of players go, and they're definitely in a transition period. And to offset this loss of DPS, they have brought in two more. This is Kassar Plays, who is from Saudi Arabia nonetheless, and Asking, the French DPS player, both DPS players. So this is interesting. Remember, Asking left Sky Foxes not so long ago. This was due to, I think, ping issues. He wasn't comfortable on the ping coming from Europe and playing on American servers. It'll be interesting to see how these two DPS players do for Clockwork Vendetta in the future. But again, they didn't have a massively great first week with Asking in the lineup alongside Kassar Plays. So it'll be interesting to see where Clockwork Vendetta go from here. So next up, we have Exodia, who is a tank player, American tank player for Maryville Saints. He has been let go and is now unassigned. Then we have some movement in China. So this is at Big Time Regal Gaming, a team that we heard a lot of last year but haven't heard of anything of this year. They have disbanded their entire Overwatch roster. So this means that the coach Smash, manager Ahui, the support players Faith and Arong, the two tank players Li Ji and Yang Yang, and the DPS players V and Kaylee have all been let go from Big Time Regal Gaming and are now looking for teams. Big Time Regal Gaming will not be playing Overwatch anymore, and they have disbanded their entire roster. Moving on, and we have some movements at Team CC in China, where we see the coach Mokul come in as an assistant coach for Team CC. We see them sign the Chinese DPS player Kami from LG Huya. LG Huya are kind of in a transition period at the moment because they've recently broken up their partnership with Chengdu Hunters. So they are not currently competing in Chinese Contenders, which is a surprise. I expect to see them back later on in the year though. And then Team CC have picked up the South Korean tank player Zbag to go alongside those other signings. So Team CC making some movements ahead of the first proper week of Chinese Contenders. So, moving back to Europe then, and we see Clockwork Vendetta in action again, where they have let the Great British DPS player Linux, or Linux, I think that's probably what it's meant to be, it says Linux. They've let that DPS player go, Linux is now unassigned. Again, movement to Clockwork Vendetta, we saw about it earlier. Clockwork Vendetta in a transition phase, and we expect them to get better as time goes along. Then we have another movement in Europe, but this is to NA now. This is Afox, the Portuguese support player, who was playing for the Eternal Academy. He has moved to NA to play for Team Envy at the top echelons of NA Contenders. So it'll be very interesting to see what he does there. Afox, a really exciting prospect, and maybe, just maybe, an Overwatch League prospect at some point. Then we see back in NA, Second Wind picking up the DPS player Speedily. A Speedily we've heard of before from Sky Foxes and XL2. He also had a previous stint at Second Wind, so he's back there now. This should be really interesting, and I wish Speedily all well at Second Wind. Then we see a movement at Petitos in Brazil. This is them letting go of the support player Rankoshi. He is now retired and will no longer be playing Overwatch. Then we see a movement back in NA, where we see the DPS player Samito. He was playing for Triumph, and now he is no longer going to be playing competitively for Triumph, but he will be a streamer / substitute for Triumph, which should be really interesting. Triumph are going to have to pick up another DPS player by the looks of it. And then we move to China, where we see like this player, the DPS player Jimmy leaving the team. He is now unassigned. And also at Bilibili Gaming in China, we see the DPS player Yakumo leaving as well. He is now retired and will no longer be playing Overwatch at an esports level. Also at Bilibili Gaming, we've been seeing quite a few other movements as well. So they brought in two players. This is Mecha the Tank and Sleep the support players. These are all Chinese players. They've also brought a support player Illusion out of retirement. He will be playing for Bilibili Gaming. They've also signed later the DPS Chinese player on a trial for Bilibili Gaming at the moment to see how he does. And also Shy, who was playing for Bilibili Gaming, he is now inactive for reasons I don't know of. I'll put it that way. So, moving from there then, and we see that First Fabulous Fighter have signed the coach Sun Pang, the Korean coach, so that's an addition at First Fabulous Fighter in China. And we see that Second Wind in NA have signed the coach Flubby, so he will now be coaching for Second Wind. Going back to China though, and Light Gaming have let go of 3 members of their team. This is the DPS player I'm37, who you'll remember from the Overwatch League, the tank player Swan from, yes, remember the Overwatch League, from Florida Mayhem originally, and then the coach Pico has also left Light Gaming. This is interesting because obviously I'm37 and Swan aren't doing too well, because it's surprising players that have been able to get into the Overwatch League aren't managing to get into a team that basically is competing at Contenders/Contenders Trials level. So, yeah, interesting, and not sure what the future holds for those 2 players. Moving on though, and we see that Light Gaming have replaced their coach with the South Korean coach Smash. So that's the first incomer at Light Gaming to replace one of those 3 that were lost. Then we have a movement in the Pacific, Global Esports. This is Petal, the American DPS player. He is retired from Overwatch Esports and therefore will no longer be competing for Global Esports in Pacific, and we wish him all the best for the future. Then we move to Europe, where we see the Contenders Trials team Vox Nihili appoint a new head coach. This is Baito, the Finnish player. He was a substitute for Vox Nihili and he's now become their head coach, so we wish him all the best with his venture into coaching. And then we see a movement at Atlanta Academy in NA, where Haku, the Japanese support player, will now be leaving the team and he is no longer assigned. On a more serious note, there have been some allegations made about Haku that we are not going to go into in this video, but again, I don't expect Haku to be on the esports scene for a little while now, because at the moment, I don't want to say he's toxic property, but it's, you know, there's been allegations put around his side of the stories out there, the other person's side of the stories out there, and we won't go any further into that. Moving on, we have some movements at Notting Contenders in Europe. This is the 2 coaches, the Norwegian coach Glatzo1 and the British coach Sokpo leaving the team, and they will no longer be assigned. In South America, we see the Argentinian DPS player Oku leaving Awakening, who are part of South American Trials in Contenders. He is now retired and will no longer be competing in Overwatch Esports. Now, you may remember from earlier us talking about the Chinese DPS player Jimmy leaving like this player. He is joined up with the Chinese Contenders team Cosmos Veritas Gaming. He will now be rolling out for them in that DPS role. Also, we have a movement in the EU with the Trials team Ex Oblivione letting go of the Finnish DPS player Cloud. He is now no longer assigned. Also in EU, we have Shoes Money Crew EU, who got to the final of this week of Contenders up against British Hurricane. They have picked up the British support player Kumba from Olympians. And also in EU, Numlocked, the tank player you may remember from the early days of the Los Angeles Valiant. He was with Nariki Esports. He is now left then and he's no longer assigned, but he has made sure to say that he is not retiring. He is going to find another team at some point. And coming in at Nariki Esports, we see the Finnish DPS player Cloud, who we mentioned just now, and the French tank player Chubbs, who will be rolling out for Nariki Esports in future. They had a good showing in the first week of Contenders, but they will be competing back in Contenders Trials for week 2 in EU. 2 players are leaving Montreal Rebellion in NA Contenders. This is the tank player Chain and the DPS player Tanner. They are no longer assigned and will be looking for teams. Again, Montreal Rebellion will probably replace these players at some point. And then the last 2 to go through are Chinese movements. This is one at Flag Gaming. This is the Chinese tank player Kodomo coming in for Light Gaming as they compete in Contenders. And then last but not least, we have V, who we did mention earlier, who left Big Time Regal Gaming. He is now joining up with like this player and will be competing in Chinese Contenders this season in that DPS role. And we wish all of these players, whether they are out of teams or in teams now, all the best in the future. And that is the end of our list for this transfer roundup. Now, I'm going to try and make these roundups weekly because they do tend to get out of hand if I leave it too long. At the moment, that is pretty difficult. considering the kind of up in the air video schedule that's been happening at the moment. But hopefully we are going to get back into a routine now with the Overwatch League starting up once again. But with the massive fixture list that the Overwatch League have come out with, we could see a change slightly compared to what we were seeing a few weeks ago. But that will come with time. Overwatch League Roundup does start again tomorrow with your Week 7. It is classified as Week 7. Your Week 7 meta preview as we look at the heroes that will be banned for the actual second week of hero bans in Overwatch League. And then after that, on Friday, we will have the week preview for Week 7, where we will finally see the San Francisco Shock, the Los Angeles Gladiators, and the Seoul Dynasty back in action, and amongst others. We will be seeing all these teams back in action now, including the Chinese teams, which is great to see. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in the next video. See you then.